So sitting here with two women that are chiefs within the fire service, battalion chiefs, and so I don't know, I mean, such a huge accomplishment. So can you tell me a little bit just about your journey into the fire service and just becoming a firefighter? Like, what was that like? Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I'll go first. I was not one of the classic people who grew up thinking, I'm going to be a firefighter when I grow up. I went all the way through my college years interested in science and wanting to be a doctor or a biology teacher or something in those realms. I was an athlete all through my years of high school and college, and that I think translates really well into a lot of the job skills necessary in firefighting. I graduated from Cal, and the next day saw a friend of mine graduate from the fire academy, the Joint Fire Academy in Santa Clara County, and she was becoming a firefighter in Palo Alto. And she was not much bigger than me. She was probably an inch, maybe two taller than me, and had played soccer through college, and so it just seemed like we had a lot of things in common. And I watched her graduate from her fire academy and saw the video of all the cool things that they were doing in their training, be it pulling hose lines, flowing master streams, auto extrication, throwing ladders, all the different parts and pieces and components of that cool video they put together at the end of an academy. And I thought, wow, that's really awesome. Similar personalities, similar stature, similar kind of drive in life. And she started talking to me about me being a firefighter. And I would visit her at her fire stations, and it was actually sitting in the back of an ambulance at the Palo Alto Station 6, talking to a couple of the paramedics, where I realized that I could practice medicine, but do it off of a fire engine and also do all the other cool things that firefighters get to do. And that would be a much more positive and teamwork environment, less kind of sterile and inside of a building, like being in a doctor's office or a hospital. So practice medicine, put out fires, do auto extrication, rope rescue, all those other things that are exciting and fun parts of fire service life. So that's how the inspiration came to me.
Okay, awesome. So someone in your life that was pursuing the fire service and got in and was successful and served like as an example for you to show that like not only is this possible, but I saw her go through it. That's good.
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome, Blossom. And how about you? What was your journey into the fire service like?
Much like Jenna, didn't really think about it at all. Wasn't on my radar. Shocking. Didn't really see anyone that looked like me. But I was accepted to Cal Poly after high school. And because of financial constraints with my family, I couldn't go. And the best way was JC, a couple years, and then, try it again kind of thing. I said, okay. And then a family friend who was already a firefighter, 2 years ahead of me. And we just happened to talk to each other. And then he kind of said, hey, have you thought about fire service? No. And he said, yeah, same thing, athlete, played basketball all 4 years. And he said, why don't you give it a try? I said, really? Are you sure? And then he said, yeah, I think you should. So, and he said, look, it's an academy. I think it was 8 weeks, Monday through Saturday. If you don't like it, nothing wasted. You still go on whatever you were gonna do. But if you like it, it could be for the rest of your life. And true to form, I signed up. I was in Sauna College, and everything just clicked. I wasn't very academic in school to begin with, and so for me to want to learn, it's just a different perspective. It's just everything clicked for me, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. This is it right here. So you just, when you want something, you devote, you're dedicated, you're willing to put in the effort and time. So that's what I did, and then lucky enough, got picked up by City of Fairfield Fire Department, and tested. Did the whole every firefighter has a story of how long it took them, the test they had to go through, and that's what I did. And I worked for Fairfield for 1.5 years, and then City of Davis opened up a job announcement, and a lot of my friends at that time were transferring to Davis or Sac State. And one reason after another, I just felt like, okay, I should give it a shot. So I tested with Davis. I was lucky enough, got picked up, 30 years later now, 31 years, here I am.
And which department are you with now?
City of Davis Fire Department. City of Davis, yep.
Good stuff. And so I'm wondering from both of you guys, just kind of hearing your story and knowing some of your story, even outside of this space, was there anything that along the way that told you, well, I'm a woman, maybe I can't go for this. This is like a male dominated job. Was there anything discouraging about the process, or maybe even internally where you thought maybe you couldn't go for something like that, like the fire service?
I think that growing up in the way that society was when I was younger, when I was a kid, there weren't images of female firefighters. It was not something that I had ever thought about or aspired to do. So it was not even anything that crossed my mind early in my life until I met a female firefighter. And then I met several male firefighters. There was actually a guy who lived a floor above me in an apartment building in Oakland who was, at the time, he was on probation in Oakland Fire Department. And he would see me come home from soccer games all covered in mud. And he would tell me, you need to be a firefighter. So there were both positive influences, females and males, who were very encouraging. There were occasional instances where somebody would be very outward about their doubt in me. And being 5'2" and $1.25, 125 pounds.
All muscle.
And I was like pretty much all muscle at the time because I was training constantly. I was an athlete in college and never lost that athleticism and shifted basically right into training and preparing for the fire service. And I knew that I had my work cut out for me because the gear that we wear is very heavy and the equipment that we use is very heavy. And the 24-foot extension ladder was kind of my nemesis in the very beginning. But I had to learn how to do some things in different ways than other people. The 24-foot extension ladder is 71 pounds and it's 14 feet 2 inches bedded. And I'm only 5'2", so I can't even reach the balance point of that ladder. So I just cheat it back a little bit, and then I have a different technique when I'm placing it where it needs to go. It doesn't look the same as how other people do it, but I'll put it where it needs to be. But it just took some different determination and mindset in order to get to where I needed to be with that.
Awesome. How about you?
I think that comes with being an athlete. And I think that's just, what works for you. And Jenna probably would agree, you know your body best, the mechanics that you need to make your body work to make certain things happen. And so answering the question of, was there, I think everybody would know I would be lying if I said, no, everything was great from day one. It was open arms, welcome, couldn't wait, thought this day should have happened way sooner. That would not be the truth. So yes, there definitely were, your conventional obstacles. Everyone has doubts, right? That's just the way it is. And change is hard. And change in the fire service is extremely hard. It's a profession that's steeped in tradition. And, but, here we are. And those that paved the way for me. And now I'm in the position to pay it forward. And so that's why we're here. That's why we're here. And we need to stay here. We need to encourage others to join us. It is truly the best profession in the world.
Absolutely, and it's really just a major blessing to have the both of you on the Cal-JAC commission to recruit women for the fire service. To have your perspective, to have your experience, to have just your history and kind of and your jokes and the laughs and you know what I mean, like everything else too that you guys bring to the commission. And so it's beautiful because, you talk about, some of the challenges and things like that. And And so nowadays, there's girls' camps, there's boot camps. You know, there's all these ways to get exposed to the fire service. And so in these spaces, they really talk a lot about some of the physical challenges and stuff like that, some of the ones that you mentioned. You know, so kind of talking about the Cpat or things like that. What are some of the challenges you notice that women run into with the Cpat? Maybe some of these things are covered at the boot camps or girls' camps throughout the state. But I don't know, just in your mentoring of women coming into the fire service, what are some of the challenges you notice that women specifically have with the Cpat?
I would say upper body. Upper body and understanding your own, again, going back to understanding your own body mechanics. If you have the upper body strength, you can overcome a lot of things. But if you don't have as strong of upper body, there's a lot more you can do. And I think people have this image of a firefighter that have to be, be able to live, look a certain way, this and that. When in fact, you could get a lot done if you know how to fulcrum, if you know how to take certain things to your advantage, how to strike the hammer, the sledgehammer, and what position, and how to do the ceiling breach by just going underneath a little bit and using your body, doing bulk of the work. And you have to have the determination. You really have to have the determination. It's 10 minutes and 20 seconds. And you have to tell yourself, it's 10 minutes and 20 seconds for the rest of my career. This is what I need. This is what I need to focus. And if you go to the orientation, you do the practice, every event you will pick up a little something. When to drop that saw, at what point do you pick it up? It saves you 3 steps. At what point do can you throw the ladder? Okay, you have to touch every rung, but how far can you pull that lanyard to allow you to have time? You need to save the time. For the last couple events, that's really hard. So it's understanding your own body mechanics and make it work towards your advantage.
Did you have anything you want to add to that, maybe?
I just think sometimes women have had others tell them, or society tells them, that you shouldn't do certain kinds of work, or you shouldn't be so aggressive or bossy, or whatever. And this profession requires that you be more assertive, have more determination, understand, like Emily's talking about, the body mechanics and body positioning. And if you didn't play a lot of sports like I did or she did, then you don't have that background of honing those physical skills and building that physical strength and stamina that allow you to really be prepared for the Cpat. So adding to the practice and the stations and learning about each section of that test, practicing or having a really good exercise regimen, CrossFit or CrossFit style workouts, that high intensity, constantly varied functional movement, doing other things like mountain biking and rock climbing, and do something that you really have a lot of joy in when you're doing it, so that it doesn't feel like work all the time. I can't get enough of climbing and mountain biking and skiing and other outdoor adventures. So those kinds of workouts, that kind of physical training doesn't bother me. It brings me a lot of happiness, but it adds to what I'm capable of doing within my profession.
Now, would you say that a low intensity hike, would that count?
It would help.
Okay.
It would help. Everything helps if you're active, and especially if you're carrying a load. So when, I know you did the series of photos that's you in your basic uniform, and then you put on your turnouts, and I would venture to guess that my turnouts and helmet, what is that? Probably 25 pounds. And then you put on the SCBA, and I think ours are over 30 now. And then by the time you pick up any pieces of equipment, then I'm easily doubling my weight if I'm going to work with tools and equipment in hand. And it takes some time to get used to, and some training. You can't just pick that all up one day thinking, I'm going to do this today and be successful at it. You have to work at it for a long time in order to, and not a week, that's not a long time. I'm talking a couple years to really build a foundation of that strength and stamina that is going to be required. Not just for the Cpat, but to get through the academy and then make it through your career.
Absolutely.
That low intensity walk you talk about gives you in a good headspace for the mental part of the mental part of the job that we face. You know, I do a lot of thinking when I'm walking, and I think it centers you in ways that a quick and high intensity, you know, workout that can't give you. But it gets you prepared for that.
That's so good. I've received that. It's so good. Just like some of the things that you talked about, just in terms of like the messaging and stuff like that, and how nowadays that's not the case anymore. You know, you see messaging, you see women that are firefighters. You know, there's these active programs to try and create more awareness and things like that, and just the importance of, you know, just kind of centering yourself, because and you guys tell me from your perspectives. What, if you were to give it a percentage, like what percentage of this job or pursuing this job is mental?
A lot. Percentage. Oh, I at least half. Yeah. Because it's not just the getting yourself pumped to go and take the test and achieve something physically. There's a lot of what we do and see as firefighters that can be stressful, draining, very sad. You know, most days in the fire service, I would say that I couldn't believe I got to do the things I got to do, or I do the things I do, and get paid to help people. But there's some days that there's not enough money in the world to make you feel okay about what you're doing. You know, if you're doing CPR on a child, or, you know, some of those. So there's a very mental, emotional capacity that you have to build and understand as well. Totally,
absolutely. And then just in terms of candidates that are preparing for the Cpat, you know, what kind of advice would you give? We've talked about ways that you can live an active lifestyle, you know, so it's not just a workout, it is a lifestyle. But how about foods that people should be eating? And we all know the ones we should all be staying away from, at least some of the time. But what are just good habits, or like good eating habits, that you would suggest for people preparing for Cpat, going through Cpat, that kind of thing?
Lots of lean meats, vegetables, lots of vegetables. Stay away from the sugars. Try to stay hydrated. That's probably my area of weakness, that I don't hydrate enough. I start every day with coffee, and I have to force myself to switch to water at some point.
There's water in coffee, right?
But yeah, nutrition is a really big deal. You got to fuel the machine. You can't put crappy fuel in a Corvette and expect it to, or a Lamborghini, and expect it to really perform for you. So choosing foods that will build and nourish your body.
And it's a lifestyle. You know, it's not I mean, I'm not a nutrition expert or anything, but I'm old. So I can tell you, my old self would tell my young self is honestly, eat healthier, start that earlier, and it becomes a habit and becomes a lifestyle. And as you age, you will reap the benefits from it. You know, and it's a longevity. Fire service is a long game. It's not like your traditional athlete where there's a span of XYZ and then, you know, and then you're done and that chapter is over. Totally. We're talking 2, 3, sometimes more decades. Yeah. So.
Totally. Speaking of food, either one of you guys have a really good firehouse recipe?
Oh, everybody going into the fire service should have at least 3 meals that you can put together pretty easily. Because typically in the fire service we pool our money. Everybody puts money in the beginning for ours in the beginning of the day, and then one crew will go to the grocery store and buy the ingredients and make the meal. So I would say tri-tip with chimichurri and maybe some roasted potatoes and salad would be one really good firehouse meal. but red meat only once every week or two. We do lots of chicken thighs because they're more at the price point. So maybe chicken thighs and roasted vegetables in a salad, or fish. I like to make salmon, grill salmon, and then of course salad or vegetables and quinoa. I often, rice definitely has its place, absolutely. With certain meals, you can't not have. But quinoa is a good grain that has some protein in it that balances well with vegetables and lots of meats. What are your favorites?
Yeah. It's interesting. I started when I was really young, and I didn't know how to cook. And so I did not have 3 or 4 recipes under my belt coming into the fire service.
I didn't either.
So
I learned them in the firehouse.
Yeah, exactly. We take turns cooking, and you could buy if you want to, but that's your turn. That's what you want to do. Yeah. And that's all I did. Guys loved it because every few days they get to eat out because of Emily's cooking. So, the joke was they make meals and I make reservations. That's what my husband tells me all the time when we were dating. It's like, oh yeah, no, I make the meals, you make reservations. So I would, I was always buying. And then finally it hits your pocketbooks. And then you just kind of say, I really need to do something. So you start paying attention. What are they doing? This and that. And now I have many more recipes under my belt. And the guy, and everyone has their unique thing. Like if so-and-so's working, you're like, oh, I really, really hope they will make this and that. So the ones the guys, and gals, firefighters I like is shrimp tacos. That's one. And then the other one is I make this meatball rolled in sweet rice, and then steam them. And then I do all vegetarian stir fry with vermicelli, shiitake mushroom, carrots, cabbage, sprouts, snow peas. And I do this giant stir fry, and then the meatballs on the side. And you can taste it. And it's to the point where the guys would be counting. You already had 3 meatballs. You're done. Or like, no, how many are left? Is there another tray, Emily? Kind of thing happening. So that's like, I cook a lot more now.
I love that. So can one of you or both of you bring some of this to the next Women's Commission
Sure,
meeting?
Jenna would be more than happy. I would be more than happy to.
Absolutely.
So good, so good. So a minute ago, you were talking about the academy, and you just kind of used it as a very brief example, but in having to go through your department's academy and your hiring process, what was your experience like, in the academy? And go back to that space for a moment and really think about like where you were in life at that time. Did you have your own family? Were you, what were you kind of battling at that time? What was the academy experience like for you?
Academy was hard. Academy, it was. You put everything on the line because now you got the letter offer your job, but there's a lot of pending. Pending you pass background, pending you pass medical, pending you pass psych, and then congratulations, now you're on probation. And they can let you go without cause. And you're like, I'm so happy. Okay, now what? The kind of thing. And then you go through the academy. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I was single. So that truly was my full-time job. You really put all your effort. And it wasn't a smooth ride. It was bumpy.
Yeah.
It was very bumpy for a while. And I think it has to do with maturity, and it has to do with age, and it has to do with life experience. And you learn, you learn very, very quickly. Because if that's what you want to do, you pretty much have to just kind of say, okay, I'm not going out on weekends. I am, this is it. I got to get through this. And there are times you have to prove yourself over and over again, but you don't give up. I mean, that's just how you have to, if that's what you want to do. And you'll find people that are encouraging, and you will find people that do set you up to succeed. At the same time, you do find people that maybe set you up to fail. Yeah, not so much, and that's okay. And that's okay. That's life. You just just head down, do your job, try to do the best you can, and you get through it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So would you say that like that, and I don't know if this is what you're saying, this is kind of what I'm hearing, is that the probationary phase is just hard, male or female, wherever you're at, it's just a challenging process.
Yep.
Yeah,
They are
very
deciding
rigorous.
whether or not they want to spend the next 30 years with you. It's a very lopsided dating process. I don't know how to, it's very unequal,
Yeah.
and it's meant to be that way.
Yeah.
And now that I'm looking at the young recruits coming in, that's exactly what it is. Because you spend a third of your life away from your family. You spend it with your fire family. And it's a group of adults thrown together, not necessarily by choice, and say, go, get along.
Yeah, and you're living together.
And you're
at the
living
same
together.
time, so
Yes,
there's no.
a lot of dynamics going on.
Yeah.
Yep. So the probation period is, all eyes are on you for a reason.
Okay. So Jenna, feel free to hop in for this particular question, just about your experience at the academy, or we can shift to the next part, which is, what's the most challenging part of the academy? Because I've heard, how difficult it is, and you definitely, just did an excellent job explaining that. What would you say was the most challenging part of the academy? If there is just one, I don't know.
There's a number of challenges that come with it because you're learning how things work in the fire service if you don't already have that component down from other experiences like Ride Along or Community College Academy or something like that. I had the benefit of going through an academy with a number of other agencies in Santa Clara County. So it was a joint fire academy. So there were people from Palo Alto, Santa Clara County Fire, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, and Milpitas. And we were broken into teams, and I had excellent teammates who were really, really great. We were blue team. We wanted to push each other. I push, you pull. Let's get this done together, whatever the task was. And I already mentioned that I struggled with a 24-foot extension ladder, but my teammates supported me. And there was even somebody in my home agency, Mountain View, who spent extra time with me at our drill tower in Mountain View to make sure that I was able to master that skill so that I would be able to pass all the exams and continue to be successful with that as I move forward. Because in our agency, there's only 3 people on an apparatus, so that's an independent skill. You have to be able to do it yourself. My team, whether it was in the academy or moving forward on an apparatus, an engine or truck in the fire department, needed to know that I could do that any time of day or night. So it required, that skill was the hardest for me. But I loved so many of the other things that we did that I was pretty much, you end up exhausted, but I was pretty much really excited every day of the academy with quality teammates and a good training cadre. They got us through to be able to report to our agencies and get assigned on an engine and start the job.
Absolutely. And so for candidates right now in the academy, and so they are experiencing exactly what both of you described. And so they're having a moment where they're feeling like, man, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this. Yeah, just the realities of it. And so what would you say to someone who's in that space right now, who's really, really struggling to make it through the academy? So that's part one. But also, if you ever found yourself in that space while you were in the academy, how did you overcome that,
I think asking for, if you're not already getting the help that you need, being vulnerable and humble enough to ask for the help that you specifically need is a really, it's a tough thing, right? Most of us get into the profession because we just want to help everybody else. But there are definitely times, whether it's in the profession or outside of it, that you have to ask, you have to seek, you have to find who your allies are, your coaches, your teachers, your mentors, and get what you need to be successful.
Most definitely.
And it's not forever. The academy is not forever. they're getting longer and longer because we're including more and more things in our academies these days, especially if you're doing a full Firefighter 1 academy. They can be 18, 20 weeks long, which is a huge portion of your life. But take it in bites. Take it in steps. You don't look at a staircase and think, God, I'm never going to get to the top. You just do it one step at a time, right? Mm-hmm. So take it in bites. Find your mentors, find your leaders, find your teachers, the people that really care about your success. And they are there. You just have to figure out who they are, which ones, and allow them to invest in you because they want to.
I'm hearing so many things from that. I'm hearing receive, I'm hearing ask, and I'm also hearing find your tribe.
Oh, yes, well said. Boom.
You said it, I just reframed it for this brain. But it's so good. But how about you? So it's really just, just the academy experience when you kind of felt like, or if you reached a point where you felt like, I don't really know if this is for me. I don't know if I can really make it through this. But for the candidate who's in that space now, what would you offer to them? And
show up. Show up. Show up every day. I would say Jenna talked about the 24-foot ladder and how she was struggling with it, and she found somebody at her home agency who was willing to help her. It couldn't happen if she didn't show up.
Yeah.
You could want to ask for all the help. You could even ask for the help. You could get the help, but if you don't show up, none of it's going to happen. And it cannot be lip service. It cannot be, look, I really, really need help in this. I really could this. You guys are wonderful if you could just do this. And you go through the exercise of it, but you never showed up. And I'm not just talking about physically showing up. I'm talking about your whole self. Bring it to the line, bring it to the game, whatever that is. You have to show up.
That's so good because you're probably building up respect amongst your coworkers by doing that part, by just showing up. But you're also that inner you're building that up. You're showing up for you. Man.
100%.
Any stigma around asking questions? Is there any time where you feel like maybe, as a woman in the fire service, I don't want to ask too many questions, or is that even a factor? But just any stigma around asking questions at all?
Depending on the question.
Any stigma around that question that I just asked?
It's actually one of my probably my personal weaknesses is that I have had to get better at asking for help. And I probably wasn't as good at asking for help when I was younger. It's still a little bit of a struggle for me because I'm fiercely independent. I want to be capable, all those kinds of things. But sometimes you just have to find that person, the resource, whatever it is, that somebody that you can connect with. And it may take you a little bit of time to figure out who the right person is to ask questions or ask for help. But you have to. And now is so different than when we were rookies. Like, we had to go to the paper training manual that maybe did or didn't have all the information on something. Now you have Google at your fingertips and you can find out anything about anything very quickly. But the subtle nuances of this particular piece of equipment, you're not going to find a YouTube video on that. You're going to have to find somebody who really knows and understands this chainsaw, this blower, this auto extrication tool, or whatever.
Absolutely. And so at FCTC, we find that, similar thing happens all the time where we put videos on YouTube of the Cpat, of the, practice and things like that so you can watch it, but you can't get the nuances from that. You can get like what to expect, but you really need to come in and lift things for yourself, right? Oh, yeah. And so the parallel that I kind of see is you can use YouTube University for lots of different things, but you can't use it for the finicky tool. You can't use it to really know what the Cpat practice or the Cpat test is actually like. The other thing you can't use it for is mentorship. You really need that hands-on approach. So can one or both of you guys just kind of talk to me about mentorship? What does it mean to you, and why is it so important in the fire service?
It's hugely important to have people that you can turn to. So as somebody entering the fire service, I would recommend that you have people in your group or your class, maybe some people that you've been taking courses with at the community college, perhaps somebody that you know who's already entered a fire department in their of your generation, relatively new in the fire service, and then look around and find people who have some life experience and can give you some history and perspective and understanding. So if you're making your way through and you have instructors at the college or you have part of the cadre of the academy you're going to, find a variety. And I'll give sort of an unrelated, when I went through the BC testing process last year, I did the same thing. I found a former chief from my department, I found somebody that I knew through the commission to help, and I actually worked with Emily quite a bit. So a variety of people, different perspectives, different ways of understanding things, so that you can increase the way that you yourself understands the world around you and what's influencing how people behave, the history of what things are structured, and that sort of stuff.
Most definitely, most definitely. How about you?
I would say mentorship is important because at the end of the day, we all just want to belong. We all want to feel you belong here. And in fire service, again, it's a long game. It's a longevity. You spend all of your time, a lot of your time there, and you want to have that sense of belonging. You don't want to feel excluded. And the only way you know the history, how the department you work for got where it's at, whether it's good or bad, you want to know what happened. You hear stories that the senior people talk about, and then even though you didn't live it, but you have to give them the credit that they know why they got certain places. And without the mentorship of knowing, understanding, and continue that tradition, the good part of it, you have to have someone there. You have to have someone willing to take you in, willing to show you. And it's building trust at the same time. And it's teamwork. Because no one can do this job by themselves. No one. That's why we respond as an engine company. That's why we respond as 3 engine companies, 4 a truck company, and the battalion chief shows up and everything's already in play. It's because of years of trust, years of respect, years of mentorship that take you to the end result that you need.
Definitely.
I really like what she's saying about belonging, and I want to bring up something that I was thinking about this last night. What are some of the things that I really want people coming into the fire service to know? And belonging is hugely, obviously, very, very hugely important. Something that took me a while to learn coming in was that the harder you try to fit in, the less you belong. So don't change who you are. Come in as the wonderful, awesome, authentic human being that you are, and give what you have, who you are, to the group, and belong because of that. Don't change who you are to try
Not to
and
assimilate.
Fit. Yes.
Not to assimilate at all. It's
Exactly.
You are who you are. You bring something good to the table. And what you have to offer, others see it and say, you belong. This is what we've been needing.
There's a saying, your gifts will make room for you. And so, just be who you are. Bring that to the table.
100%. Yep.
So good. And so, should a candidate who happens to be a woman consider having a mentor that's also a woman? Is there any value to that?
I think so. I think so. From the simple things of figuring out what to do with your hair under your helmet, and managing just being a woman, menstrual cycle on the monthly, and some of those are easy, obvious things, but there's more subtle kind of microaggressions that occur consistently that you have to figure out how to give grace for people who don't understand their unconscious bias, and figure out when to speak up and not tolerate something that shouldn't be happening. And you can really only do that if you have a great sounding board.
So learning, kind of how to navigate through those things and pick your battles, or, kind of?
Yeah, in some sense, yeah.
Very good, very good. Did you want to?
Nope.
Okay. Awesome. And so do you see men in your departments mentoring women coming into the fire service?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Is that style of mentorship any different or?
100%. 100%. They're just things they're not going to understand or know. But once upon a time, they too were rookies. Once upon a time, they too were lining up in the rain, in the sun, looking for a job. Once upon a time, they filled out applications just like anybody else. So they should have a very good understanding of what it's like starting out.
Okay. And so from the mentor perspective, so from that lens, what makes a good mentee? What makes you want to continue to mentor someone? You see things, you're like, oh, I'm so proud of you. Like, what are those things? What stands out?
Follow through and listening, actually taking some of the suggestions and really considering and I'm not right 100% of the time, and sometimes what I suggest might not be the exact right thing for that individual, but I will often approach it from giving somebody options. Dig in and figure out who you are and what you want, because not every firefighter candidate should be a paramedic. Some should come into the fire service as EMTs. So that's one of the kind of the forks in the road that discuss with people of which things should I do first, because fire service demands a lot of variety of knowledge, right? So do I go to EMT school and then get my firefighter 1 and then go to medic school, or should I go to, which way should I do this? And that I think is a really personal choice for people. How do they end up how do they want to serve the citizens? What role do they want to play within the fire department? I love being a paramedic. I loved having that role and having that interaction and being the primary patient care person on calls. Not everybody is going to love that. Many people will do very well in other roles. So helping somebody discover by asking them questions. And so I get really juiced when somebody will come back after a discussion and talk about, oh, I actually already completed this. Last time we spoke, I went to, you said maybe consider this. Now I have completed my EMT and, I got a job at the hardware store. Or I've been working with my uncle who is in construction, so I can just figure out how house framing works and how some kind of plumbing works, or, some of the other things that aren't necessarily in the Firefighter 1 curriculum, but give you a lot of understanding of just basic tools, how they work. Because that's what those fire engines and trucks are. They're big, giant rolling toolboxes. And we show up and figure out how to use the tools for the problem that's facing us. So a mentee who will actually spend some time with you and listen and get stuff done and come back and call or try and schedule an appointment or shoot you an email, excited about the thing that they accomplished and what should I do next? Or I'm thinking about this or this, what are your insights? Or that kind of stuff.
So
I love
good.
those. I love those people.
So good. I don't feel like there's a space where that line of thinking isn't true. Just at work, at school, whatever, insight someone's providing to you, you go ahead, you take it, you digest it, you move on to the next phase. So it's excellent insight. Did you want to mention? Okay. Cool beans. So next, just working in the fire station. Culture of the firehouse. Talk about the fire family culture and just the sense of camaraderie that you have within your department. What's that like?
It's fun. It is super fun. When you have a good crew, you sit there and 30 years later, I pinch myself. Oh my gosh, I am getting paid to laugh so hard. I am being made fun of, and I'm making fun of somebody, and it's never out of malice. It's always from a point of to include them, honestly, and we see each other at their best. We see each other at their worst. And I think it is through time and trust and relationship building do we know when to when a call hits us, different calls hit different people different ways. And when we finally realize, like, oh, something's going on with so-and-so, because this just happened. And I remember when my mom had just passed away, and I'd gone back to work, and it was a very similar call, same age, same medical issues. And I was basically, I'm a firefighter, I'm going to do this job, I show up, I do my thing. And then all of a sudden, it just hit me in the middle of everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not gonna be good. This is not gonna be good. We gotta get her, to the ambulance right away, because this is just not gonna be good. And we did, still finished the job, at hand, took care of everything. And then one of my firefighters noticed it, and came around and goes, hey, Cap, are you okay? I'm like, we gotta get back to the station. This is just not gonna be good. I just remember going like, this is not gonna be good. We gotta get out of here, And then he hurried to drive her up, because they know. They know my mom had just passed away. They know the call, what my mom passed away from. And they knew, halfway through the call, everybody just got a sense of like, oh, okay, we gotta take care of her, kind of thing. So we really take care, we really support each other, and we really take care of each other. And we have fun. It's so cool. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like the camaraderie at your departments, or like the sense of culture, things like that, are different because you are a woman?
Yeah, because we bring different things to the table.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm aware, I have more of an awareness now of how things change when I'm present in a firehouse. Mm-hmm. And because I'm a known entity, if I just say, oh, what is that on the TV? Mm-hmm. It suddenly gets changed.
You set a tone.
Things change a little bit, yeah, by who you are, but that may be more than what we need to give to new hires right now.
Indeed. Mm-hmm. So what's it like living with men in the station, and do you have any tips for any women that have never had male roommates or anything like that?
Thick skin. You have to have thick skin. The retired Berkeley fire chief once told me, every morning, look yourself in the mirror, tell yourself you can get through another day when times are tough, put a little bit of baby oil on the back of your neck, and just let some stuff go. Mm. And they'll know, and once you grow into your career, you have experience, and you mature yourself, you will be that person that walk in the room, and the guys would know where the boundaries are. And you would have gained enough respect by then, and they know.
Really basic interpersonal skills mm-hmm. of speaking up, speaking directly mm-hmm. to somebody. If you're feeling very uncomfortable about something, or if you're feeling angry or picked on, like, bullying is not okay. So speaking up about something that is not right is respectable. Finding the time and the place and the words exactly how to do that is important. But people are people. So it goes back down more to, we're all human beings, and male or female, we all want to belong. And we, more often than not, even kind of poor performers, most of the time want to do the right thing, right? So it's basic interpersonal communication. Mm-hmm. If your needs are different than what you're getting, you need to speak up, but also figure out when and where and how to appropriately do that.
Absolutely. And so along the way, have you had to change any of your own habits to make station life a little more easier just for you?
I'd change any of my own habits. I think fire service has actually changed me in a lot of different ways. The way, I don't know exactly when it happened, but I was a pretty sloppy kid, but I am very neat, clean, and organized now. And we clean the firehouse every morning. You scrub all the toilets, you mop all the floors, you vacuum all the carpets. Everything is neat, clean, and organized because it has to be. And
we don't have janitor that come in to take care of any of it. It's your house.
Yeah.
You take care of it.
Yeah. So that consideration is really important Some people really like what seat somebody sits in at the dinner table is. The rookie sits at the end near the phone and not facing the television.
And yet they can get to the remote control ASAP when someone's in your asses for it. So, yeah.
There's nuances. It takes some time to figure it out, but...
You take care of your house, you take care of the equipment, you take pride in the ownership, and then when you go on a call, when things go south, it's those things going to take care of you.
So good, so good. Have there ever been times where you feel like station life has felt like a boys' club? And so, if so, how did you go about handling that, if you've ever experienced that?
Fire service is a boys' club. I don't know how else. Probably don't include that, but yeah. But you add to it. People appreciate for you being who you are, and some of it's living with another human being. It's not just a bunch of, And I don't think the idea of this frat house mentality kind of really exists to the extent people think it does anymore. And I think it is work at the end of the day. It is a place of business. It's a profession, and we conduct ourselves as such. And when I say, let stuff go, it's not getting picked on, let it go. It's not about being inappropriate and let it go. It's about learning, being courteous, how to get along. And I think, like Jenna said, if you learn your words and if you learn how to speak to people, people actually respect you more, I feel like, when you speak up and truly articulate your feelings without a lot of biases on your own that going into it. Because what you consider is XYZ may not be what it seems. Nobody, so much has happened from that point to where you think you're going or where you think you're feeling. A lot's happened in between. And it could be as simple as someone else is just having a bad day, and you take it personally, when in fact it has nothing to do with you.
I'm hearing self-actualization. How about you?
Well, it's definitely stirring up, this conversation is definitely stirring up some thoughts and ideas, and surrounding the fact that we all make mistakes. And when you do make a mistake, it is time to speak up and own it. Because there is a cultural, we tend to eat our own. So sometimes we're hard on people in the fire service sometimes.
It's like shark
And if
swimming.
you try to hide that you made a mistake or sweep something under the rug or avoid being held accountable, it's not gonna go very well. So if you make a mistake of sorts or you do something that isn't very kind or isn't the right thing to do, or you could have done something better, own it. I did this, I made this mistake, this is what I learned from it, I'm not gonna do it again. So that's just, I think that's a basic interpersonal kind of behavior, but extremely important, because there are so many things that we do in the fire service, so many things that we need to know and understand, and ways that we do things, that you're constantly learning. And I can't count the number of nights that I laid awake after calls going, God, I wish I did this better. I wish I asked this question of the patient, or man, if we did, attack the fire this way instead of that way, maybe it would have gone better, or, just always constantly self-assessing, not to a point of beating yourself up, but how can I do it better next time? How can we do it better next time?
If you don't ask that question, it's time. You do. You have to self-assess all the time. How you can improve for the next call.
And the personalities of the different people on a crew or in the firehouse, we tend to get lucky in the downtown station and almost always have at least one person who has a real quick wit, a real good sense of humor, that has an ability to tell stories and make everybody laugh. One of the things I miss most about now that I'm a chief and I roll around in a vehicle by myself is the in-cab discussion after calls. And it's comedy. It's sometimes noticing this little thing that somebody else did on the call and the humor that you find in it. Or we're constantly talking with each other about our families and telling stories about what's going on with, the teenager who's doing this again, or it doesn't matter what it is really, but having that comic relief as a way to kind of burn off the stress of being in the firehouse too many days, or running some really sad or stressful calls, or bringing a little bit of light to it, making fun of each other is
sense of humor.
Definitely
Great trait. Great trait to be in fire service. You have to have it. It's like sharks swimming in the water. They smell blood, they're gonna go for it. But then you just say to yourself, you know what? Somebody else it's gonna happen to somebody else. It's just a matter of time. And then you become the shark, and that's how we deal with stress, honestly. That's a huge part of it. Because otherwise it's, this stuff we see, then it's doom and gloom all the time, and that would not be healthy for anyone.
Well, laughter is medicine, and
I think so.
Awesome. And also to know that you guys acknowledge the mental health part of it too, just the importance of staying on top of that, the camaraderie, and all of those parts too. Have you ever felt like a weird, maybe strange sense of pressure? Maybe it's because you're a woman in the fire service, you have to work twice as hard to prove yourself, that kind of thing. Has that ever happened to one or either of you?
Yes. I tell this story quite a bit. The one thing I could control when I started out was how fast I can get out of the station. So when the bell goes off, I am almost always the first one in the rig, ready to go. Because even if I mess up on the call completely 100%, they can't take that away from me. So I practiced and practiced and practiced to be the first one in the rig, ready to go for any alarm, any situation. So much so that now I'm a chief officer, I have to slow down. And I have to unlearn all of that. Now I have to learn to slow down and let others have an opportunity, because when they get on scene, they truly make a difference right away. And the newest member of the department would tell you that when I was a captain, they're like, I don't know how, but she's in the rig, ready to go. I said, that is years and years of training, because I have to do, that is the one thing I can control, and that they can never take that away from me.
So good. And then have you, and thank you for sharing that, just being faster than everybody else.
That's it.
For sure. So have you ever felt like you weren't being taken seriously? Maybe due to the fact that you're a woman in the fire service, and just how do you overcome that feeling if it's ever come over you?
You can't prove necessarily that it's because you're a woman on any one of these things, but you can certainly tie back a probability that somebody maybe dismissed something that you said, especially if it's related to mechanical aptitude or mechanical knowledge or something. I remember talking about left-hand lug nuts on the left side of the rig, and it's not the case anymore, but our previous fleet of fire engines had reverse thread, left-hand lug nuts on the rig. And I said that in a room full of guys, and none of them believed me. So I went down to the shop, and I made friends with the mechanics and developed a rapport with the mechanics to then have an avenue to increase my personal knowledge about anything and everything, bumper to bumper, on that fire engine that I was learning to drive. So, yeah, it happens. But boost up your own knowledge and abilities in order to be proficient at your job and focus on doing your job well.
Kudos to you for taking initiative on that too.
She showed up.
She showed up, exactly. And also acknowledging that there's no way to know if that's where it's coming from. Sometimes that may be internal, perception or things like that. But it definitely can be external too sometimes. So awesome, Blossom. So let's talk about family life. Family life in the fire service. So what did your families think when you come home? You say, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, whomever, hey, parent. I'm going to be a firefighter. What was that response like?
When I told my parents that I wanted to be a firefighter, my dad had been in law enforcement, and I've heard a bunch of remarks from him over the years about either I should have done that or I went to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial with him, so there's a lot of banter about which one's better, police officers or firefighters or that sort of thing. Firefighters for sure. But I love my cops too, so that's a whole nother story. My mom, of course, she watched Ladder 49 and called me crying, and I just, didn't want to tell her that that's not real at all. It's way worse, because you can't actually see when you're in a building that's on fire. And so the reactions are definitely different. But I would say that my family is, that core family is very, very proud of me. And then when I was 35, my partner and I got 5 kids, 5 beautiful daughters. Came to me at 9, 12, 14, 17, and 18 years old. And I think it was a little confusing for them at first, adapting to the life that they had shifted into. But over time, they got used to having Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving at the firehouse instead of at home, or having only one parent home at a time, because you spend so much time working holidays, and sometimes you miss birthdays and that sort of thing. So the schedule is, there's advantages and disadvantages for sure, but you figure out how to make it work. And sometimes, working weekends and holidays, meant that you got other weekdays off so that you could be more present for other activities with the kids. One of my girls said to me one day that you're like a stay-at-home mom with a full-time job, because I was. My kids are all grown now, but there are ways to balance having a family and having your fire service family as well.
Okay.
My parents were not happy. First generation, we were immigrant from here, from Taiwan, and just unheard of. But at the end of the day, they were very supportive. My parents moved to Southern California. My mom would hear a siren. She would call me and ask if I was okay. And I said, I am. You just kind of get used to that. And then she said, don't try too hard. If they want to go in the burning building, let them. And then it's a hard concept to explain. Like, that's actually what I like to do. That's actually what I enjoy to do. And so,
that's hilarious.
But,
you go first.
Yeah, let them. Don't try so hard. And an Asian family, don't try so hard. You don't hear that often. So, but they were very, very, very proud of me. At the end, when I finally made it and everything, it takes a village to balance work life. And it's hard. It's my husband stays home full time, so everything is kind of reversed in our house. I have 2 kids. That's all they know. Kind of like what Jenna said. You have firehouse Santa. You have Thanksgiving at the firehouse. You just make do, And especially as California facing more and more devastating fires, and it's turning into a fire year instead of a fire season. And I was gone 2 weeks at the Caldor fire last year. They rise up to the occasion. It's amazing. Kids are resilient, and it's a lot of juggling, a lot of scheduling, but you make it work. Entirely possible.
Okay, so entirely possible, especially when you have the support of parents or a partner, and things like
Friends,
that. Absolutely.
Other firefighters, everyone they have to chip in.
Okay. So how does that support lend itself to growing your family in the fire service? To say that you're pregnant or acquiring a family or whatever it is, how does that work? And just kind of thinking about like the physical and the emotional aspects of growing your family as a firefighter.
City of Davis has a very generous parental leave policy. We have a 2 months parental leave, fully paid, benefit, adoption, natural
Beautiful.
birth. There's some rules and guidelines around it, but overall, that's the general gist of it. So for my firstborn, I took 3 months off and quickly realized that was not enough. believe it or not, especially trying to get back in shape, trying to go back to a very physically demanding job. But you make it work once again. And so for my daughter, I took 5 months off. And now I have a toddler, and it just gets crazy. And they know, and my husband will bring the baby by, and I will feed the baby. In the middle of it, a call will come in, So let's just say they took the bottles right away. There were no issues with transitioning to bottles, so that's just how it works. But you have to get mentally prepared. The time, the space in which you allow yourself to say, okay, I have a newborn, I have responsibility, they depend on me for food, 100%, I need to get back in shape, I need to fit in my uniform, I need to go back and fight a fire or go on emergency. The time is very short, so you have to be mentally prepared. But if you have a good support system, it lends itself to a very smoother transition. Not easy, just a smoother one.
Absolutely. Okay. Nothing like a woman. How about that? Nothing like a woman. So tell us, just as a mom, as a parent in the fire service, do you feel like the men you work with are supportive of your family obligations and just that balance between home life and work life?
They're parents too.
Yep.
Most of them. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we help each other out all the time.
Commiserate. It's that thing you do in your life that you can talk about all you want, but until you're experiencing the challenges of parenting, it's you don't really know. And then I consider so many of them like almost brothers, right? She talks about that, and you can sit and talk at the dinner table or after dinner, and what would you do with your teenagers, and how did you teach them how to drive, and how did you figure out how to buy cars for your kids, and how did you, whatever. My situation was really unique, but I certainly was able to get a lot of ideas and understanding, and so we're humans and we're parents and we love our kids, and so do they.
Absolutely. And so just from, a familial standpoint, definitely really good insight for sure. So we're wrapping up. So are there any words of wisdom that you have to anyone who's going to see this, who's coming into the fire service, who's been able to laugh with us, and just kind of taking in all the information and stuff? What are some of the things you would say to your younger self and going for a career in the fire service?
Have 2 or 3 good recipes under your belt.
Yeah, good one.
Mentally and physically fit. Surround yourself with good people.
Yep.
That will bring you up. That will help you when you're down. My family's my biggest cheerleader, and that's made all the difference. And they will forever remain the best part of me. So, but know it's a road ahead. It's going to take time. You have to have patience and understand the process, understand what each department is asking for, and look at yourself. Do you have those attributes? What can you bring to the table? And really, really have a conversation with yourself, because this is a long, long career.
Cool beans.
Yep. Every step of the way, find good mentors. Be dedicated, stick to it, be yourself. Have the kind of discipline to take care of yourself. It's like when you're riding in the airplane and you have to put on your own mask first and then somebody else's, which took a while for me to learn that one too. That I need to do a good job of taking care of myself so that I can take care of my crews, my family, everybody else that's around. We're capable of more than we think at times. I'm pretty determined and know that I'm capable of a lot, but if you asked me 20 years ago if I'd ended up being a battalion chief, I would have said no. I wouldn't have expected that I'd be where I am now.
You mind if I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Like not believing that you could, or a lack of desire to pursue it?
A lack of desire, I think, initially, until you start figuring out what it is that you want to do and why you're motivated for it. So it's a different set of digging in and asking yourself a set of questions to really know what it is that you want to do. What are the skills that I have? What are the skills that I need to work on in order to be where I want to be? How can I have the impact that I want to have? Now, these are a lot of questions that we asked ourselves and each other over the years.
All the time. All the time.
Yeah, self-actualization is a really lengthy process. And to become a firefighter is definitely one thing, but then to go through each one of the different ranks and where are your interests? Where are your passions? Those sometimes lead you to where you want to be. And I think I'm at my pinnacle, the holy grail of being the chief of EMS and training. It's a tall order, but it's a lot of fun, and I certainly have purpose in this rank. Each one I've been in, I've had some real purpose. So stick at it, stick to it, get it done. It's awesome, it's fun.
So incredibly happy that we could have this conversation today, and just with everything that you guys have shared. I think one of the common themes I hear throughout several of your answers is really, it's a battle against you. You're in a whole entire battle, against you to really get better, to get stronger, to kind of take in all these different things and apply them. So this is amazing.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
You're so
Appreciate it.
welcome.